Welcome back to another episode of MJ's Progress, Not Perfection. And welcoming back to the show again is the host of the show, the Sobriety Playbook, Michelle. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me again. I can't believe it's almost been a year since the last time we had an opportunity to speak. So I'm so happy to connect with you tonight.
It's literally been almost a year. Like, I think it was last October-ish
Yes.
so yeah, we're cutting almost exactly a year. If
Yeah.
that's crazy to think because you have your own show, and we didn't talk a lot about your show last time. 'Cause it was more of a backstory, and we have a lot of new guests that are been on the show, or a lot of new people that have started following since. So
Hmm.
we'll give a little backstory again, but the biggest thing I want to talk about is your show
All right.
because your show is when every Saturday. Is it every Saturday?
So I kind of like redid my schedule. So now it's on every Monday and Wednesday at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. And if my work schedule works with me, then I also upload on Saturday nights too.
So you're doing a lot.
Yeah, I sure have. I've been doing a lot, and then I've also started to upload to TikTok, and I've also been putting my video out on Instagram. So it's a lot more work than I was doing before, but it's working out well.
Yeah, you get a lot more of the pop off of reel off Instagram, just putting the best of segment, you know what I mean? Like under
Yeah,
90 seconds on Instagram. And it
yeah.
drives a lot of traffic sometimes if you can get the views. But yeah, between TikTok, because I'm on TikTok also. I
Oh,
love
perfect.
yeah, so I'll make sure to tag your news page into the bio. I'll have all your links in there too. But I
Perfect.
love the TikToks are great because people just mindlessly watch videos all day. So why not put the content in front of their face?
Right. Yeah.
So you're doing wow, two shows a week. You weren't doing that many before, were you?
No, I really wasn't. I didn't really start dedicating a lot of time and energy into my show until like the middle of this year. My life had been pretty. I was still trying to clean up the wreckage of my past. I have 3 years sober now. So in my second year of sobriety, like my life was still pretty like upside down in a lot of aspects. And so I wanted to put out content, but I was still doing like so much personal development that I did it when I felt called. But I was really focusing on like self care and everything for like the first 3 years. And then this year is whenever I've kind of like been able to find like a little bit more of a balance in my life. So I started to create more content.
And then how does your show go for people that don't, follow your show yet? If they go to like when they come to
Yeah.
my show, they know they're getting really raw stories.
Okay.
So when they come to your
Yeah.
show, like, cause they're twice a week, it's hard to get lightning in a bottle that many times in a row. So what are your shows like? How do they look if I was to watch it?
Yeah. So my shows, I help people to integrate sobriety and spirituality and then like merge into personal like self-development. Because like for me, like getting sober, like getting off of all the mind altering substances, like that was super important for me. But to me, it was like, okay, well, once the drugs and alcohol are gone, like what next?
As I sip
So
on as I sip on a monster. You're talking about mind altering drugs. I'm sipping on a monster or mind altering.
yeah. I mean, progress, not perfection, right?
That's what they tell me.
So for my channel, it's like once you take away the drugs and the alcohol, we're left with all of these other behaviors that we need to look at. So I help people to develop awareness around like their behaviors, their actions, to create mindfulness, to look at the reasons why they make decision on doing things, how to set intentions, how to focus on developing goals and taking the action steps necessary to achieve the things that you want to achieve in your sobriety. So for me, I have several different book series on my channel. One of them is called like Blessed and Unstoppable, and it's based off this book that's by one of my teachers named Billy Alls Brooks. He's a motivational speaker that's on Motiversity. And so I just help people to look at it, what it is that they want to achieve in their life, how to have a blueprint for success. Then I also do some series on the big book, the readings. I have like how it works on there. So if people want to read how it works, or if they want to read something specific in the big book, it's already recorded and they can just press play. Like, for example, if they're in their vehicle and they just want to listen to it like before they get to work so they could get centered and focused, I have things like that too. So
Daily Reflections is a good book for that too, I feel
yes,
like.
yes. I just finished doing the Daily Reflections recording last night. And so I have that series on there too. So it's like the Daily Reflections, the big book. I have Blessed and Unstoppable. And I have some other books too. Like, one thing that I've really realized in sobriety is like, I've become so much more open-minded about learning, you know, because I was in addiction from the time I was 14 years old until I was 39. So when I became sober at 39 years old, I just realized like I felt like a teenager. I had never really developed myself. I never really had any curiosity about becoming somebody who I thought that I could become, because I just always was taking the easy way out. So I started to read a ton of books when I
And
got sober.
42. That puts you at 42. If I'm not, you look, opiates keep us young is the like joke. Is there's so many people that have been on here that were like heavy opiate users that,
Yeah,
you find out how old they're like, what? There's no
yeah,
way you did drugs for that long and you're in your 40s.
yeah.
So,
It's
and for
crazy.
those who don't know, like you were heavy into heroin. That was your biggest, right?
Yes, yeah. Heroin was my drug of choice. I mean, it was the most intense drug addiction that I had for like that time span of like 25 years. Like, for 7 years, I was just snorting it. And then after 7 years, it stopped working. Then I started shooting up. And
Is
that's when,
the like lie you told yourself was like, it's if I'm just like 7 years of just snorting, that's somebody lying to themselves for 7 years.
yeah, yeah.
Were you working during that 7 years?
Um, Very little. I was manipulating my job into convincing them that I needed to be on like short-term disability. So they would pay me to be off work. So I would come in like maybe a couple of times a year or something like that, just to kind of like check in. And then I'd get like my doctors to sign notes and sign necessary paperwork so that I would be off of work. But yeah, the last 10 years of my addiction, I rarely ever worked because I was just so messed up in the head. It's crazy.
I mean, what were you doing to like, let's just say, like, it's really hard to
Hmm.
be on drugs. So how did you sustain a lifestyle of drugs every day if like you weren't
Yeah.
your
Yeah. So that's a good question. So the thing is, like, the company that I was working for at the time, um, I was on short-term disability, which meant that I was getting paid 75 to 80% of my income to be off work. So I was still getting money. I
okay.
was definitely still getting money. But on top of all that, like, I was selling drugs. I was stealing all the time. And then things that I would steal, I would sell. Um, yeah. So, I mean, like, it was just like a really dishonest, like, type of way of living that I was in. And it was just like super shady.
I mean, because to go on for that long, you have to have had to have felt functional for a while.
I did feel functional for a while. You know, I felt pretty functional through the time that I was doing heroin. But whenever I started doing methamphetamines, like, I smoked that for the first time, that's when
I don't
the
think we got into the methy days.
I don't think we did get into the methy days, because the methy days, like, I can skip over that really quick. You know why? Is because the methy days lasted for like 3 months.
The long
But
weekend.
it with all the shadow people, you know. Oh my gosh, just the trips like during that time were so insane. Like, I went from being like probably like 300 pounds or something like that to being like 130 pounds within a month or something.
That's
I had,
progressive.
yeah, it was absolutely insane. Like, at the end of the first month of doing meth, like, my skin was like gray, my face was like so gaunt. People thought that I was dying, and I pretty much was. I went from being on short-term disability, getting paid from this company, to losing that income, to not knowing how I was going to make it. So I sold the keys to my apartment to a drug dealer. I sold the keys to my vehicle to a drug dealer so that he could use my car to run drugs and do all this stuff. So I no longer like officially had a place to stay, and I was living on a trap house floor with bed bugs on the floor and rigs on the floor and blood and like women getting raped and like all kinds of violent behavior happening in that house. And on top of all that, it's like I'm on meth and I'm super paranoid and I'm stealing things from people and selling drugs and getting guns pulled out on me and like just living all of a sudden, just like living hell on earth. Just thinking about it right now, like I can see the images of the things that have happened to me in the past, and it's just like I can't believe that I'm still alive, man.
Yeah, I mean, you went from functioning as a heroin addict
Mm-hmm.
to it all unraveling because you couldn't. I feel like it's harder to manipulate people when you're high on meth.
Yeah, for sure. It's like when I was high on meth, it's like it was written all over my face. It's like I could not control my facial expressions. Like I had like this horrible acne and pics, like scars, like all over my arms and my body and stuff. And I was shaking and I was just kind of like this shell of a person that was just scary to look at, you
So
know?
is that what got you into sobriety at 39, or did you get off that and stick with the heroin again for a while?
So I went to rehab. I don't even know what time that, like how many times I had been to rehab at that point when I was trying to get off meth. But I went to California and so I was in Texas. I flew to California. The day I got to California, they took me to rehab, and then rehab was like, no, you need to go to the ICU because like my left arm had such a huge abscess on it. I got to the ER and they're like, we need to take care of this or else you're going to lose your arm. I had a fever, like it was horrible. So I started to go to rehab. I got into recovery out in California. I started doing the things.
Where did you go out there? Because I went to rehab in LA.
Yeah, honestly, dude, like I don't even remember the name of the place. I have no idea.
Hmm.
I have no clue.
Do you know what city it was in?
Huntington Beach.
Okay, that's where Mike. That's where the sober app people are.
Oh,
Y-
really?
Yeah, Mike Fiore.
Yes.
He's out there. That's where they're
Oh,
located at.
wow.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
that. I know he works at it. He's going to be on my show tomorrow.
Oh, very nice.
And I know that he works in recovery out there. So for all we know, you could be have been a former resident and where he works
Right?
at now. I'll have to
Yeah.
find out tomorrow when I talk. So you're in rehab in LA
Yeah.
and you get sent straight to the ICU because why
Yes.
shouldn't you? You need to be treated and looked at. And it reminds me of that movie Requiem for a Dream.
Oh,
Uh,
that's a horrible movie.
and well, if you
Uh,
if you listen to the opening to this episode, it,
Okay.
it is actually a guitar riff version of the score to that music. I love the score to that music so much that I had my buddy Nick.
Uh-huh.
I had him record his own cover version of that on his guitar, and that's my opening to all my episodes is Requiem for a Dream soundtrack.
Oh my God.
Um, and I remember his arm in that movie. Spoiler alert: it's from 1999. I think we're safe, but he almost loses it. He does
Yeah.
lose his arm. What are we talking? He
Yeah.
loses his arm because of how bad the abscess was from shooting heroin in it. That entire trip. It's mayhem. That shows you like that movie shows you how bad it can get, like, and how things can
Hmm.
unravel because things weren't that bad for them. And then all of a sudden they were driving down to Florida and he lost his arm,
Yeah.
and that's they do the electric shock therapy on the mom and all that. It's a wild movie.
It is a wild
So,
movie.
so how long did you stay in California before you came back? Like now you're getting treated for this arm before you lose it.
I think I was there for about 2 months,
Okay.
something like that. And then I came back to Texas. And to be honest, like that time frame is kind of like really spotty for me. And what I always tell people is like my memory doesn't really start until like 3 years ago. Everything else is just like bits and pieces and puzzle pieces that start to come together every once in a while, but there's no like fluidity to it. But I chose to stop shooting up at that point because I was so scared about losing my arm.
But
Um,
I like how you danced around that carefully. You chose to stop shooting up, but not chose to stop doing
oh, for real.
drugs.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. It was like because I was always looking for another way.
Fool
There's
me
always
once.
has to be another way. So I figured, okay, as long as I'm not shooting up, then I'm gonna be fine. Um, so I just started, like I was saying, like when I was doing meth and I was all methed up, it was like I was 130 pounds. So I come back to Texas and I start drinking really heavily. So my weight shot up to 300 pounds again. Um, and I started to just take a ton of pills, a ton of pills. And the thing is, like, I used to get prescriptions, which meant that I had like a prescription price for the medications. But that's whenever like Big Pharma started to kind of like pull the reins back and you couldn't get like the Xanax or the Narcos or those other things like really easily. And so I had to start paying like the price from street prices. And that was,
What year was this?
gosh, man, maybe
2015, 16?
like 16, 2016 ish,
Okay.
something like that.
I
Yeah.
remember when those prices went up. I remember those days too because I was going and
Hmm.
getting a script filled illegally and all that because it was a shady doctor.
Yeah.
But I remember when he got shut down when for being a pill mill, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden the prices everywhere were shooting up because everyone had to pay out of pocket for all
Right.
these things, and find these new connects. And
Hmm.
I'm scared to death to relapse now
No
because
kidding.
with the fentanyl everywhere and in the pills and everything, with the way that I did drugs, I wouldn't survive today's drugs.
No kidding. See, yeah, I was just thinking about that too, because I think, like, when I really think about it, I think it was probably back in 2017 to 2018 is when I really started to get into the doing all those pills that I was talking about. And that is when in San Antonio, I had heard about people getting their own pill pressers and stuff like that. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, people are cutting stuff with fentanyl and all these other things, and people are just taking a pill and just dying like just like that.
Yeah, I
That
would never.
started to scare me so bad.
Yeah, and what scares me is that I had a preference when it came to pills. Not that I was picky. Let's be honest. If
Right.
I was going to take whatever you were going to give me.
Hmm.
However, I had a preference for like 30s were my thing. 30s are my
Yeah.
favorite pills, and the M30s are my favorite type of pill. Where they had the M on one side and the 30 on the other with the dash.
Hmm.
They were my personal favorite. Like if you had them, I was going to drive an hour to see you. Let's be real. I was driving an hour to see you anyway.
Yeah.
But nowadays, that's the most pressed pill because it's the most favorite pill on the street. So now it's the most pressed pill. So
Hmm.
now if you get a real Roxy, it's really
Hmm.
rare because of how much fentanyl is out there. And
Oh
that
no.
scares the shit out of me because I know the kind of drug addict I was.
Right. Exactly.
This podcast is also sponsored by BetterHelp. If you are looking for therapy and not able to get something right away locally, you can do that with them. Within 48 hours, you can find a therapist to get on telehealth with you. I mean, I haven't heard anything but great things from people that have already done it that watch my show or listen to my show. If you're looking to get 10% off your first month, you can go to betterhelp.com/MJ's PNPMCA. That is betterhelp.com/MJ's PNPMCA.
Yeah, that is so scary. There's been several times whenever I've overdosed on heroin because it wasn't heroin and it was straight fentanyl.
Were you living with anybody that was just like co-signing your shit, or were you living alone during all this time?
Someone was always co-signing my shit, dude. Like constantly. I had a really bad codependency issue. I did not know how to be by myself. And every single person that I was with was always co-signing my BS. I remember when we spoke about a year ago, we were talking about the whole cycle, the 7-year cycle of mine with the guys. It was like I would be with a dude for like 7 years and then like, all right, well, that one, I got tired of that one. So I would start my relationship like with another guy. And every single time, like, I mean, they were just as toxic as I was. So
So was it new drug, new guy, or was it same drug always and new? What did you have different like
yeah,
alcohol with one guy,
that's
heroin
interesting.
with one, or meth with one? Did one kind of always go lined up? New drug, new guy.
Yeah, I'm smiling because I just never even thought about that. And you're so right. It was always like that. Like the first dude was like, crack cocaine, 7 years. Okay. Oh, let me stop smoking crack, you know? And then it was just like the heroin dude, 7 years. And then the next dude was like meth. But the meth guy, that, like I said, that one didn't last very long. It
Well,
just
I mean, in meth years, that was 7 years.
probably.
It's like
But
dog years. It's when
yeah,
you're on meth, you're awake for a long period of time. So it feels like 7 years, I'm sure.
that was, you know, I do like that was the worst thing to me about being on meth. Like, because I've always been this person, like, if I can't get sleep, my life feels like a living hell. And it's like I was just like really living in hell at that point. It was so scary.
I get it. I mean, I'm an insomniac. I mean, now like I'm medicated insomniac. And it's actually working. I'm getting sleep for the first time in my life. But it was to the point where in April of this past year,
Mm-hmm.
completely in sobriety, I went 11 days straight without sleep.
Oh no.
And then I tried it. Then I got my doctor was like, try Ambien, and I tried it. I got sleep for 5 hours,
Uh-huh.
and then it never worked again. And because I was
Uh-huh.
awake for another 6 days after that. We've jumped around to like four different things. Finally, we found one that works for me where I don't feel loopy, and I actually go to sleep naturally. So that's been helping. Plus, I was unmedicated for being OCD. I didn't know that, and
Mm-hmm.
that was keeping me up at night. And so
Okay.
now that I have something for that too,
Mm-hmm.
that combination, and now I get sleep finally. But before I was not sleeping, even like for years, I would go days on end without sleep,
Oh man.
and I was like self medicating with Xanax, in my 20s,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously that's no good. The only thing that's bad about like the Zyprexa is what I take now, and is my wife has caught me sleep eating and walking. Like she's caught me like she said she went into the kitchen the other morning, like 3 o'clock in the morning, and like I was eating her Hershey bar that was like in the fridge, and like she said I looked like a little kid caught red-handed,
Oh
and
no.
and I just slowly put it back and didn't say a word, and I just like walked back in the
Oh
bed.
my goodness.
So I'll take that over anything else, though. I'm finally getting sleep. It is what it is. If sometimes I'm stealing some candy, I'm stealing some candy.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
That's
cause it was maddening. It's when you're awake for that long, you don't realize that you have rage in you until you're awake for that long, and then rage comes like, and if it doesn't manifest outwardly, it's manifesting inwardly.
for
That
sure.
that rage, and I can feel it. That kind of like when you're awake that long on meth, like besides being delusional, is that why meth people like you get into fights and no one's trusting? Is it because of the rage of being awake for that long, you think?
I think so. I think that has a lot to do with it for sure. And I mean, and then plus like all the junk and all the toxins that are in that drug, it's just like you don't even know what's in your body. So I think your body is just kind of like screaming for help from the inside
So
out.
so you were saying that every 7 years, new drug, new boyfriend, or whatever.
Mhm.
But now you're sticking to yourself to kind of like figure out who you are, right? And if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken.
Yeah. Yeah. For the past 3 years, like I had made a decision. Well, first, I came into a 12-step program. My sponsor, he was like, for the first year, do not get a boyfriend. Are
I
you
made a
smiling
face.
because I said he?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So gosh, man, there's like,
No,
so,
I get it. I get it. I'm not judging. I
oh
have
no, I
a
feel you.
I have a woman sponsor myself, so
Oh,
like
do
I get
you?
yeah.
Yeah, so whenever I came into like the 12-step program, everyone was encouraged, like males stay with the males, women stay with the women. There's not a lot of women sponsors that are available in the 12-step program that I am in. Not only that, like the biggest thing was when I got sober, I did not have any type of confidence or faith in women, period. Like all the previous relationships or friendships that I had had in the past were like so toxic. And I
It's
was
it's so
really
funny because
frustrated.
I wasn't even smiling at you because you said guy. I was smiling because I was relating,
Oh,
and
I see.
because I felt the same way, but about
Yeah.
men.
Yeah.
Where all my relationships were friendships that were like all like, was that because of drugs or were we friends because of we're friends?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just good, just friend. So like I had a big problem. Like I even had to have women therapists
Mm-hmm.
because I had so much. The only time I saw a male doctor was my psychiatrist, and
Oh,
guess what? It was the only doctor I lied to in rehab
okay. Oh no.
because I
Yeah.
didn't feel like I could be honest with him,
Right, right.
and I didn't trust him. And now I
Mm-hmm.
have him. Now I have a psychiatrist that's a man,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm early sobriety. JD did not want to hear what you had to say if you were another guy.
For sure.
I didn't trust you. All men had screwed me over all the time because
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't in relationships, throughout my addiction. I was in one
Yeah.
long-term serious relationship and ended in her death.
Oh no.
So like it was suicide. It wasn't like she was sick. She was bipolar, schizophrenic, and an alcoholic.
I'm
So
sorry to
she
hear
was
that.
she was sick. Thank you. It's been 7 years, but I
Mm-hmm.
spiraled.
Mm-hmm.
And so the only like I had trouble opening up to another guy. And I had a guy sponsor at first too for the
Yeah.
first like few months, but that was so hard for me. Like I felt like I never lied to him, but I also omitted information, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely makes a lot of sense. I get it.
It's like I was like, I'll tell you what I know you want to hear, but I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going to tell you everything that's going on in my head yet.
Yeah, for sure. We are such good manipulators. It's like it I don't know, for me, like in my addiction, one of the things that I use like my spiritual gifts to like read people, to be able to know exactly what it is that somebody wanted to hear, so I can manipulate you in such a way. And I knew that when I got sober, I was like, okay, like the drugs and the alcohol stopped working, I can't get high no more. Like my life is a living hell. I've lost everything. I'm homeless. My family hates me and I have no friends. And I'm in Austin, Texas. I don't even live in this city. What the heck am I going to do? Like, if I'm going to get a sponsor, I'm going to get somebody that I can trust, somebody that I can open up to. And I don't give a shit what anybody else thinks about me having a male sponsor, because my life is on the line. And if this is going to work for me, like I need to be able to trust somebody. So I said, F it, I'm going to do what I need to do. And I'm glad that I did, because everything that that man has taught me has saved my life.
Yep, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, one of my second to last guest of season 2, I met her in the rooms.
Mm-hmm.
I met her in LA in the rooms, and we would go to meetings together. And her sponsor was somebody I looked up to in the program. Like he was an
Mm-hmm.
old timer until the day he died of old age, and he had like 33 years of sobriety by then, in his 60s, 70s.
Okay.
And so I saw how much he did for her, and that made me more willing to be like, no, we can break these rules.
Yeah.
Some rules were meant to be broken. This is old AA way of thinking, and I don't want to subscribe to that way of thinking. I want to be more open minded thinking.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So yeah, I wasn't given the look to judge. I was given the look to relate. Like, oh,
Okay.
I get it, that kind of thing. Because, and I'm sure you probably, and it's not like it's a romantic thing. Like even mine's engaged. You know what I mean? Like it's not a romantic thing whatsoever. It's just somebody I look up to in the program and that I feel comfortable and confident going to for anything.
Right, right.
Because you have to be able to trust the person that you are. So you're still like you're still in the program?
I'm still in the program. Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Now are you active in that as well outside of this?
I am. I mean, I go to meetings. I go to online meetings. Like it's interesting because I have like a online Zoom home group, and then I have like a home group that I go to in person. So
Okay.
I go to meetings like half of the time online because of the way my work schedule is. And my home group in person, like I'll go to a meeting maybe a couple of times a month because they only have like meetings in the morning and my work schedule is like in the morning time. So I just go to whichever one I can.
Now
Yeah.
what's it like down in Austin, because you're in Austin, right?
I'm in San Antonio now.
Oh, you were in Austin.
I was, yes.
Okay, but is recovery different from city to city? Because I know they're more like Austin is where all the LA people went, and it's the biggest like homeless problem. I'm not telling you any new information.
Yeah.
So is it any? Because I remember going to meetings in LA, and there would be at least 10% homeless at the meeting. That was
Mm-hmm.
their way of getting a snack and getting a coffee, and
Mm-hmm.
they would sit down and listen.
Mm-hmm.
Only like a couple times would they interrupt the meeting.
Yeah.
I remember the one time a dude, it was a late night meeting. Anything goes at late night. Anybody would
Uh,
tell you they go to 11 o'clock meeting in LA. Shit's gonna
yeah.
go ahead.
Right.
And this dude came swinging out of the bathroom. We heard the door shut behind him, and he goes crisscross applesauce in front of the podium. And he raises his hand to say, like, "Can someone help me stop smoking meth? I just got a high in the bathroom." Like that's when you know you're at like a late night meeting is somebody's getting high in the bathroom, then admitting to it right away afterwards.
Yeah.
So that was a really liberal city though, with a lot of homeless problem. So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
homeless in the meetings. Now, do you
Mm-hmm.
see a difference between San Antonio and Austin?
Just a slight difference, not much to be honest, because there's been a lot of people, homeless individuals being dropped off in bus loads here in San Antonio. So it just depends on what side of the city you go to. There's like my home group, we don't get homeless people at
Okay.
but then at another place that I go to every once in a while, it's just like that's where they hang out because it's like a club there. So the doors are open all day. I mean, like we have a snack bar, we have like tables, chairs, and people can play games and do whatever they want all day long. And so it's open 24/7.
And then I know this from LA. I'm not like being disparaging against the homeless because we welcome them into the meetings.
Right.
We wanted you to talk. We wanted you to sit down. We
Yeah.
know that one of these days the message is gonna hit. We're not here
Hmm.
to like judge any lifestyles.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I'm definitely not trying to judge. I mean, dude, I was homeless before too. I know what it's like to like not have a place to stay, like just trying to have a roof over your head, maybe get something warm to drink or like a snack or something like that. So it's just it's a big paradigm shift whenever you are able to look at it from like an experience from the past and see where you came from and see where you're at now. I mean, it gives me, I have a lot more empathy for people that are homeless than some people that I know because they've never lived it themselves. So,
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear that you're doing so much for your sobriety still today, and that your show's doing what it's doing. Is that only on YouTube? And plug your show some more before we wrap up, because I want to make sure people know how to find you.
yeah. So, I had started to record like audio versions on Spotify, but I have maybe just like 3 shows on Spotify. But for the most part, like my energy is focused on my YouTube channel. So I have shows that are uploaded every Monday and Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. And so I just help people to integrate sobriety, spirituality, personal development. I talk about prayer and meditation and mindfulness, consciousness, awareness. And just recently, though, one of the other things I wanted to bring up is one of the reasons why I ran into the arms of addiction at the age of 14 is because I was always so energetically sensitive. And I had a lot of spiritual gifts, but I didn't know what that meant. And I didn't start putting the puzzle pieces together until about a year ago. I didn't realize that I was an empath, that I'm a telepath, that I'm an intuitive, that I can read people's minds, that I can channel, and I can do all of these things. But now I'm starting to teach about telepaths and empaths and just spiritual gifts. And because one of the things that I've really noticed is that a lot of people that are in recovery most of them are very energetically sensitive. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of people go to addiction, because they don't know how to manage the relationships that they're in, or the people around them, or the energy that is just like happening around them in everyday life. So I just like to give people examples of what it's like when you're reading someone's mind, or what it feels like if you're an empath and you walk into a room, or if you walk into a house and you can feel the presence of someone that's passed, because I'm also a medium. So it's like all of these things that I'm starting to discover as I've gotten sober, I like to share on my channel, because a lot of people that are in recovery have the same gifts. They just don't know it yet.
So where are you first discovering? I'm not trying to poke holes.
Yeah.
Whatsoever. I totally believe in all the energy forces, because I believe in that more than I believe there's a God in the sky. So I believe in energy for sure. So I'm curious, what was it that first made you realize that you could even, because I read a whole book on reading people. It's
Okay.
like back in the days of psychology. I was like, I need to know how to read people. I need to know how to do it when I'm selling them something. So I was a salesman for a
Oh,
long
really?
time, and face to face at Best Buy. I worked a decade at Best Buy as a
Oh,
salesman.
man.
Well, even as sales manager for a while.
Uh-huh.
So I got really good at reading people to know I know what I need to say to you for you to buy a TV from me and everything else from me.
Yeah.
And it's everything from body language. So what is it for you? For me, it was Criminal Minds. That show blew me away early on. I was like, I need to learn how to read people. So what is it that got you wanting to be able to read people, or even really harness that energy?
Yeah, so for me, it's not like I had a conscious thought that said, you know what, I'm totally like, I really want to learn how to mind read, or I really want to learn how to read people. It wasn't like that. It was something that happened just naturally when I was a kid. So whenever I was a child, my parents were very strict, specifically my father. He had a very stressful job, you know, he worked full time. My mom stayed home and took care of me and my brothers and everything like that. A lot of times when he would come home, he would be very angry, frustrated. I would get spanked, you know, we would get yelled at and stuff like that. So I got to the point where, looking back, I realize now that I needed to learn to read his mannerisms. I could just tell like what type of mood he was in by the way that he was walking, the tone in his voice, or the inflections that he used, or whatever it was. That's how I learned to read, was like through reading my dad, just so that I knew like, okay, that's not a good time to talk. It's a good time to stay silent. It's a good time to stay in my room. It's probably best for me to just be quiet in these moments. You
So that
know,
was a necessity at the time then.
yeah, it was absolutely a necessity. Yeah.
And how is your relationship with him today?
Oh man, the relationship with my dad is amazing. You know, the thing is like, I realize now like the way that I perceived my dad um was completely wrong. My dad loved me so much, was trying to protect me from these drugs and like all these horrible things that I was doing. But I just didn't understand. I have always had this like rebel type of thing going on. And if somebody told me not to do something, like that's exactly what I wanted to do. You know, like my dad was doing his best to protect me from these horrible things that were happening in the outside world. But the thing is, like in reality, I've always been that type of person that needed to go through these trials and these problems and suffer, because that's the only way that I was going to learn, you know. So I love my dad. Like, he and I are the closest that we have ever been. So I love him dearly.
That's awesome to hear. It's,
Mhm.
that you can have a lot of people, go through addiction and just try to blame everything on everybody else and not take
Yes.
responsibility. And then you finally get clean. You're like, how's the relationship? Like, oh, fuck him still. And it's like, no, you want to get that relationship and learn why
Yes.
you had to do all these things. And I
Yeah.
think you're somebody who like needs the answers.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point that you brought up, because before I got sober, I blamed everyone and everything for all of my problems. It was your fault. I'm not going to take responsibility, and F you, you know? But I didn't realize that only one thing needed to change, and that was me. And only one person needed to change. That was me. And only one thing needed to change. And that was absolutely
Everything.
everything. And so when I remember looking at that, like at the beginning of my sobriety, I was like, damn, like, how the heck am I going to do this? So it was like 1 second at a time, 1 minute at a time, 1 day at a time, and then a 1 month at a time. And now it's like 3 years, and it feels like a blink of an eye. So it's just, it's crazy. Like, the amount of things, like how our perspective can change and how everything can shift, and how all of the feelings that I had, like, towards my family, like I felt like I hated my family, and I had so many resentments. One of the things my sponsor taught me is, like, having a resentment is like lighting yourself on fire and hoping that the other person burns. And so, like, my life was always like that. I was always so angry and so fearful and so anxious. From the time that I was a kid, I was full of all this fear and anxiety. And what I realized is, like, the way that I perceived the world was not what was actually happening in reality. It was just part of what was happening in my mind, and my thoughts prevented me from seeing the truth. But now that I don't have any mind altering substances in my body, and I'm learning to reprogram my subconscious mind, and I'm learning to see things from a different perspective, and I'm learning not to take things personally, and I know what projection is. And I realize that so many people are living in resentment, that most of the time, anytime they respond to me in a situation, they're just stuck in this cycle of living the past over and over and projecting their experiences towards me, and it has nothing to do with me in that situation.
That's very well put. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you sitting down with me again. Are you your socials at Sobriety Playbook?
Yes, I can be found on all social media platforms at the Sobriety Playbook. So TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. And if anyone's ever looking for any type of spiritual guidance or sobriety or personal development, I can also be found on Wizio. Yeah.
I never heard of that, but I'll take your word for
Okay.
it. And you
Yeah.
have like a link, so I'll put all the links in the bio. So if people are looking for it, it's easy to find. The Sobriety
Perfect.
Playbook is a really cool name. I'm glad you got to it because
Mhm.
somebody was bound to take it. It's, the name rings up the bell off the tongue, and it's not too many syllables. Sometimes people have these long names. You're like, oh, it's too many syllables.
Right.
So the Sobriety Playbook is nice and easy to say. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
thank you again for taking the time to sit down with me and give me an update on how you've been this last year. I really appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. It was so good to reconnect with you. I appreciate your time.
Same. Of
Thanks.
course. Have a great night. I'll see
All
you.
right, we'll see you.
All
Take
right.
care.
Bye.
Bye bye.